So this was brought to my attention yesterday, and uh, I guess people are buzzing about it now. There's this new lawsuit from the DOJ, from the Trump DOJ, and this one actually looks like it might be kind of interesting. It's against the SPLC. And what it essentially says is that the SPLC has been funding the so-called far right to the tune of millions, I think millions of dollars, like a lot of money, a lot of money that they've been essentially propping up these so-called far right groups, and that they've got a lot of informants within these groups who are getting heavily compensated, and none of the informants are named. There's a lot of people guessing and speculating about who they might be, but the charges seem to extend beyond just, paying off or finding an informant, buying off an informant, and getting them to rat on their compatriots. In that sense, it's like the SPLC is almost, it's not a Fed group, but it's pretty much Fed adjacent. I guess it's what would they call themselves? I guess they would be they're like a privately owned and operated group in the same way that ADL is, but in the same way that Planned Parenthood is. Although that there's a lot of bodies like that have obvious that get a lot of federal money and have obvious agendas that they are obviously pursuing, even though a great deal of the population, a high percentage of the population, is not on board with these groups and not on board with their ideology or agenda. But they posture as the good guys. Exposing the evil, corrupt racists who are out there. And but it seems like what's essentially being alleged here by the feds about this Fed adjacent group is that they are, to a great extent, propping up these groups, funding these groups to the point where, the kind of people who actually contribute to these groups, thinking that they're contributing to groups that will to a group that will work against the influence of these nefarious far right groups, that actually what they're doing is keeping them afloat, funding them to such an extent that that they are more conspicuous, and thus, and this is the real, this is the heart of the scam, if you will, which all all activist groups, all powerful activist groups, this is what must be at the back of their minds at all times is, how do we continue to justify our own existence? If the things that we work for, if we do a really good job at fighting racism or whatever, and racism disappears, then then there's no longer need for us, and then people don't give us money anymore. So racism always has to be a really deep-seated threat. There's always alarmist, news about all the gains that quote unquote racists and quote unquote hate groups are making. The SPLC has fallen out of favor, I think, in recent years. They've never been particularly in my favor, but I think there was a point at which people started to see that there was something really scammy about them. And I think I can't remember exactly the details right now, but I think there was some internal corruption that got exposed. This was several years ago. And after that point, people stopped talking about, or the SPLC was invoked a lot less than it used to get invoked, by federal groups, who say hate crimes have increased blah 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 this much in this year over the past 5 years or whatever. But as somebody who played some kind of role within the so-called far right, the dissident right, the alt right, during those years, I wonder how much of the money. I didn't get much money. Don't get me wrong. You could not call me, you can call me a grifter, but I was never good at it. I never successfully grifted. I was always, I always managed. I've never been good at getting people to give me money. That is among many of the things that I am untalented at. So yeah, not really too much grifting, but the time that I flew down to South Africa to write my essay about the Afrikaners, flew down on the dime of NPI. At the time, the group that Richard Spencer was a part of, and at the time, Richard Spencer and I were on good terms. This was many, many years ago. Now, wouldn't it be wild and crazy if the SPLC helped to fund my South Africa trip? To what extent is the dissident right a cutout of the SPLC? That's what I'm wondering now. And to what extent are events like Charlottesville, which I attended, which I've written about, I was there, not as a participant per se, and not as I wasn't going to give a speech or anything like that. I had fallen from. If I was ever anywhere near the ascendancy or the luminaries of the alt-right scene, I had fallen off considerably by that time. But nevertheless, I was there, and just to quote somebody, document the event. My purpose was to document the event. Those who know will know who I am quoting when I say that. My purpose was to document the event. I have, and I've published a short book about it, which mainly consists of several essays that I wrote, reminiscing about that period of time and my experiences at Charlottesville, and what happened at Charlottesville, and how it got so misrepresented by the media, and so misrepresented by mainstream politics, and how how it was essentially an ambush. And now I really wonder, who, even the ones who were behind the events, these like, it was supposed to be taking a stand. It was supposed to be taking a stand for Southern culture, protesting the removal of the Robert E. Lee statue. That was the motivation for the gathering, wanting, it was a pro-Southern kind of event, and Charlottesville was removing this statue of Robert E. Lee, a revered figure, within Southern culture, widely acknowledged as a gentleman and as a man of conscience. But because he fought for the big bad South, he can't be revered at all, and he's bad, and we have to take his statue down now. That was the motivation behind the whole thing. But of course, it became a lot of things. But I think what it ultimately became was an ambush, and was maybe something that had been cultivated. Clearly a trap was sprung, and clearly, there were plenty of people who were supposed to be participants in the event, who it seems were actually getting dough from the so-called enemy to be informants. But we're still also left in place to do their thing. So it's like a lot of things in the world. When you talk about Israel on October 7th, what happened? How did the Iron Dome collapse? How did Hamas, sail in on parasails to wreak havoc on Israeli citizens? What was happening during those couple of hours when so many Israeli citizens were just helpless, and Hamas was killing and raping and torturing and kidnapping people. Why did that happen? Well, Israel needs an enemy like Hamas, right? It helps to justify their behavior. It helps them to justify the kind of things that they have done. The same kind of dynamic is at play there that I see with that I think what's been exposed with this lawsuit. Those are my thoughts about the SPLC lawsuit. Thanks for the dough, SPLC. And that's about that. Interesting stuff. Irony can be pretty ironic sometimes, as they say.